Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, joining me via Zoom, second week in a row. You know, we said we'd get Phil Elson back, you know, depending on what happened in the regional weekend of the college baseball tournament. Well, Arkansas advances. Screw everybody else. I mean, just about everybody else lost, but Arkansas is in. Phil Elson, of course, is the host of Halftime on ESPN Arkansas and the play-by-play voice of Arkansas baseball, best college baseball voice that I know of. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Aaron, I'm great. Glad to talk to you today, which means that the Hogs advanced. It was a good, really kind of a dominant regional performance. And now this is the marquee super regional leading into Omaha. This is the only SEC versus SEC matchup. Interestingly, it's the only super regional that features a rematch of any kind. Even the one that's got two ACC teams, which is Miami and Louisville. They didn't have a regular season series. Arkansas and Tennessee didn't just play each other for 3 in the regular season. They played to close out the regular season, which was just 3 weeks ago. So they're really familiar with each other. And we know that, you know, the storylines of the coaches knowing each other and all that. But I think that all that together and the talent level of these two teams makes this the marquee super regional.
Okay, really quick. Is there a cat behind you or is that a graphic?
That's Kiki. That's one of my, that's Kiki. I adopted her about 4.5 years ago.
Dude, and that scared me. You know, sometimes, you know, we got these weird Zoom background things. I was like, I think that's a real cat. Right. I'm not sure.
You never quite know if it's AI that's over your shoulder or anything. But yeah, no. She's one. I got 2 of them, and she hangs out sometimes when we're talking sports. You just don't see her when we're doing radio together, AT, but she's there sometimes.
Okay, well, my little Charlie girl is in the other room. She may want to. You know, it's about that time where she just starts causing havoc, so she may join the pod. She might want the Oregon State, Florida State super regional breakdown as well. So we'll get to that one in a minute. Really quick, let me ask you, first of all, you know, you seemed confident but not cocky about Arkansas's path last week, and we'll get into the preview, the series this weekend and everything else. But I am interested because it goes without saying, everybody else either lost or struggled. You know, LSU needed 3 games against, or needed the final game against Little Rock, and of course we know what happened: Vandy, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, etc. Was it just the matchup? I mean, you're around this team more than anybody. I'll say this, just other media members who I see cover Arkansas, you know, seem to say that this team feels a little bit different. I think the maturity was the word you used last week, but, you know, really one of the few really, really good teams that really didn't even sweat last week to a degree in their regional weekend at home.
Yeah, they trailed for half an inning, and it was the first half inning of the game. Of the whole thing. North Dakota State scored a run in the top of the first. The Hogs answered with 2. They didn't trail again. And it was dominant and overpowering in the ways that it's funny, you don't use this word very much with baseball as you do with basketball and football, but just a physical team that overpowered their opponents in terms of home runs. 10 home runs hit, 2 home runs allowed. In terms of strikeouts, 41 strikeouts for Arkansas pitchers, 17 strikeouts for all the other teams that they faced. Those are the things that show you an overpowering style of baseball in which the other opponents just couldn't match up. And that's what it came down to. And that has nothing to do with a poor level of play from North Dakota State or Creighton, the 2 teams that Arkansas played. It's just they had not faced teams of any kind that are that talented, meaning Arkansas. And I think that showed itself out in those ways, but that's also in a way that Tennessee does match up with Arkansas because they have the flamethrowers and they have the home run hitters. And so this is not a matchup of one team's talented than the other. This is a matchup of you can't make mistakes in this series because the opponent will be taking advantage of those mistakes.
Well, we'll get to the series preview in a minute. By the way, unintentionally, I just happen to be wearing my Tyson Foods shirt, so it's an Arkansas-heavy show. But I do got to ask, you know, I think we talked about this on your radio show, but last week we had SEC spring meetings. I thought the league looked a little whiny about the state of the college football playoff, and it naturally led to SEC fans defending SEC schools, and of course, everybody else saying the SEC stinks and is overrated. I only bring it up because what happened to everybody else in the SEC besides obviously Tennessee and Arkansas, and I think there's four SEC teams in the Supers, but listen, Greg Sankey likes to swing a big stick, but some other people were swinging back last week. What was the deal with all these teams struggling? I know obviously not everybody was a host, but four host schools don't advance, and obviously the top two seeds in the entire bracket. Was the SEC just overrated like they are in everything else, Phil, or what actually happened here?
I don't know if overrated is the right word. It's the same idea as in football. I think that the talent level in that league, both in baseball and football, is higher than all the other leagues. That just doesn't always mean that you're good, that you're a cohesive unit. I mean, there will be more players drafted out of the SEC for the Major League Draft in a month than there are for any other league in the country this year. And that'll just be, I don't know, the eighth or ninth year that you could say that. It happened in football again this last year, even though the Big Ten has more teams. Um, so, but that also the talent level doesn't mean greatness, doesn't mean great teams that know how to win games. And I think that was on display. Vanderbilt, the big problem for them was, what did you believe? Were they the team that really couldn't score runs for about 2.5 months there? Or were they the team that really kind of got by on the ability to score runs for a month leading into the tournament? Well, it turned out they didn't have the bats to swing their way out of the losers bracket. Same with Texas. I mean, Texas looked like a team that was going to need to win on real slim margins, and they did that quite a bit throughout the regular season. And then you end up running into a hot UTSA team that had their number once in the regular season too. LSU, I mean, the thing for LSU is they have two great starting pitchers, and then they kind of got to scratch and claw the rest of the way, and that's what happened in their 2-game set essentially against Little Rock. But that's a scrappy team, and they're really good too. It's just kind of odd to think about. I don't know if Kentucky belonged in the tournament this year.
I know. Took UConn's spot, but that's another conversation. We'll save that
Yeah,
conversation.
based on their resume, that might be overseeding the league specifically. And I don't know if I view that the same way I viewed Florida or Ole Miss being the last team into the tournament and were a really talented team out of the SEC. I don't think Kentucky was that this year. So, but it's crazy to think. I thought on your podcast last week, I thought I said this may be a world with 6 SEC teams in Omaha. Yeah, there aren't even 6 SEC teams left in the Super Regional. So it just goes to show.
Yeah, no, it's different. Let me ask you this. I'm just kind of curious, big picture. Schloss in year one, and this isn't I'm not gonna make fun of everything that happened last year, but we've seen this in other sports where kind of in this portal era, new head coach, whatever, not really an excuse. And I'm not saying like, oh, he's not a great coach or whatever, but like, is it the same in baseball now with the portal where basically, is it one of those things where I still think year one, I would assume would be considered a success for him. Of course, he came from Texas A&M. But is it one of those, like he needs till year two to get his culture in place? Or like, is it just one of those, dude, it's the portal era, you're Texas, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is like finish number 2. Is there like another step for them to take as a program? Like, was this deemed like a wild success? Was it kind of I don't know. I don't even really know where I'm going. I just think that it's interesting that, kind of in this portal era, basketball, football, whatever, it's just kind of like, okay, there's no reason you can't be good right away.
I think part of it is also the job that you step into and what those expectations are for that program. Texas is like LSU. That's a place that doesn't celebrate regional tournament championships. It's expected. It's the same with Super. You're expected to be in Omaha on an annual basis. And so you look at a team that won the SEC this year. It's the most difficult. It is a gauntlet. That's an accomplishment. And I mean, I know people will point to something Schloss said that it's more difficult to win the SEC regular season championship than to win the College World Series. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to be able to compare a 2-week tournament to a 30-game, 3-month gauntlet. which really tests out your depth. And I think it says a lot about how they coach them through the year. When we saw them in Fayetteville, they did not look like a number one team. They looked like a team that was finding ways to win games. And I think that kind of ran out on them a little bit. That happened to the 2023 Razorbacks. They were at the end of that season, we looked at them and thought, this team went 20-10. That's an amazing accomplishment for anybody, but that did not look like a team that was going to do something like that. And they ended up not even making it through a home regional. So sometimes you think those things about teams that have great regular seasons, and then they can be exposed in a regional. That's regionals are about, if you fall into that loser's bracket, you better hit your way out of it. Arkansas wasn't able to do that in 23. They couldn't do it the year before. Texas was not built for that this year either.
Very interesting. Very interesting stuff. I think 7 of the top 16 originally are still in. How many teams do you think can realistically win it? And let me even ask you this. Like, and I think we did this a little bit last week, but like we talked about, Coastal Carolina hosting a regional, Oregon State, et cetera. I believe that, like, in college basketball, there's the difference between a team that can get to a Final Four and actually win the national championship. I always say, to get to a Final Four in basketball is great, but to win a championship, you've only won, you still have to win 33% of your games. You still have to win 2 games once you get to a Final Four. So, like, in theory, yes, there are 16 teams that are all, still alive, but how many of them do you actually think have enough to actually run the table and win the whole thing in Omaha?
Depth is so much a part of it, or big bats, and teams that can get hot in a way that you got to be able to stroke together a lot of line drives. In that ballpark, Omaha is a big ballpark. It is the biggest ballpark that anybody will play in the college season. College ballparks are generally smaller. That's a major league size ballpark. Even bigger. I mean, that's a big major league ballpark, just in terms of the size of the field. So you've got to either be able to string together base hits. You can't just rely on the home run. And you've also got to have a pitching staff that's deep, or have a couple of starters that can go out and give you dominant performances and keep you in games. Arkansas is a team exactly like that. They're built for Omaha, and their pitching staff is the reason why. We focus so much on the lineup and the home runs, and that's for good reason. And that's going to come out big in the super regional. It came up big in the regional. In Omaha, you got to have a deep pitching staff, and this team's pitching staff is, I think, better than people give it credit for, just because they haven't had starting pitchers routinely that went 5-6 innings, but there's plenty of relievers that are there to back them up, and even some of them that have emerged in the last 3-4 weeks. LSU has the kind of starting pitching that can do that for you too, with Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, and with the built-in off days. If you stay in the winner's bracket, they can make a lot of noise too. But this all comes to the idea that if Arkansas and LSU make Omaha, they play each other in the first game. So one of those 2 teams drops into the loser's bracket, and both of those teams do not play for the national championship against each other this year. So, I mean, I think those are probably, in my eyes, the 2 favorites. You can't sleep on North Carolina. North Carolina had a pretty dominant performance in their Chapel Hill regional. And you can't sleep on Florida State either.
Wow. Florida State going to Oregon State this week.
Or even Oregon State. And I'll say for Oregon State too, because, man, and they did this when they beat Arkansas in the 2018 College World Series. They lost their first game in Omaha and then ran the table. And then Arkansas beat them in the first game in the finals, and Oregon State won the next 2. The Beavers fell into the loser's bracket in the first game of their home regional, and they hit their way out of it. I think that's the kind of lineup that can get really hot if they get the right mojo.
I was going to ask, has it been a topic about reseeding? I feel like I've seen that. Do you believe in reseeding after the opening weekend?
It would make sense if you did that. We want them to do the same thing in the basketball tournament. We want them to do the same thing in the college football playoff, but I don't think they're going to reseed, because if you end up reseeding, then what do you do with the matchup that's that ends up with a couple of teams that make it through a regional that aren't seeded, or one makes it through and another one like LSU and West Virginia. LSU is a seeded team. They're number six. West Virginia was the two seed. Why would we have to match up LSU against, oh, I don't know,
UTSA or
like
somebody.
Duke or or or
UTSA.
Arizona
Yeah.
or another unseeded team when they're already getting one right there? It just I don't know if it's necessary just for the idea of fairness, because all you really are doing is you're building a bracket and you're going from there, and you just let the matchups occur where they are. That maybe doesn't always mean that the best eight teams in the country are in the College World Series, but it doesn't make it any less interesting either.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of it in basketball. So, and I think too, like, and this is very random and maybe not the best reason, but if you want to grow the sport, if you want to get people filling out a bracket, you can't really do that if you reseed after the opening weekend.
That's true.
All right, the big one, the big one that you're going to be at, obviously, Tennessee defending champs, Arkansas. First of all, let me ask you this. By the way, did you see Chipper Jones kind of throwing a little shade? It felt
I
like
did.
at Tony Vitello and the boys.
I think it was thrown at Volunteers, at Georgia, um,
That's right. I saw
maybe at
Georgia do some stuff.
Kentucky a little bit too. It's just an ethos, I guess, a way of celebrating your in-game successes that just are foreign to someone like Chipper Jones. Um, and I mean, it's a value judgment thing, but I'm going to guarantee you that there were guys who played in the 40s and 50s that watched when Chipper Jones played and
Sure.
saw guys wearing earrings and all saggy necklaces and stuff like that, and they're thinking, what's wrong with these guys? It's a time-honored tradition for the previous generation to question a lot of things about the current generation. And I work for a program in Arkansas that acts like they've been there. They generate their emotional responses towards their own teammates, not towards umpires very much, not towards opposing fans, not towards opponents. And I like that about Arkansas. Um, and that's going to be a diametrical difference between these two programs in this series, too.
Let me ask you this. We've talked about Tony Vitello previously working at Arkansas. Is this considered a rivalry? I mean, obviously Arkansas has been great. Vitello coming off a national championship, and I know like Arkansas has the historic rivals like Texas, whatever. Are we officially at rivalry status with these two?
I think so. And it started. I think it really started from 2021 when the two of them got into a heated argument behind home plate after
That's
the
right.
last out of a series in Knoxville. Now, I don't think that there is any personal animus between the two or between the coaches. Arkansas's pitching coach, Matt Hobbs, he and Tony were teammates at Missouri, and they're close. But I do think that there's a rivalry in terms of they're recruiting a lot of the same style of talent, maybe not always the same players, because you go about your business a little bit differently on the field at Arkansas than you do at Tennessee. So it might be recruiting a little bit of a different style, but certainly the same kind of player in terms of talent. Um, what it takes is, they played for an SEC championship in 2021. Um, but since then, it's just been a couple regular season series.
And one
They've
year, didn't they
never
miss
faced
each
off
other
in the
too?
postseason.
They missed each
Never.
other one year too. I feel like it was a big thing that year.
These teams have never been in Omaha together,
Wow.
and they've never played in the postseason. This will be, for those talking SEC tournament, which isn't the same as the NCAA postseason. This is where rivalries are taken up to another level. We always thought that Arkansas and Tennessee, once Tennessee got to where they are, which started in kind of 2021, that they would be a team that Arkansas would face in Omaha. To face them to get to Omaha is just as good. There was a season in 2019, Arkansas and Ole Miss played three at Baum in the regular season. Arkansas lost two out of three. Then they played three at Baum in the super regionals. Arkansas took two out of three there. 3 years later, it was 3 years later, Ole Miss beats Arkansas two out of three in Omaha to go to the finals. That rivalry got taken up to another degree because of the postseason, and we'll hear. And the fans, I don't think, like each other very much either.
Um, Anything else stand out going into this weekend besides that? That's obviously, and it's not just because you're the Arkansas guy. You said it off the top. It is the premier showcase, event. It's funny, it's must be an Arkansas thing, premier opening game of the NCAA tournament with Kansas, premier, second round
Right.
game with St. John's. Now we got premier super regional. I know you don't have time to watch pretty much anything other than the 2 to 3 games that you'll be covering, but anything else stand out in terms of the bracket that interests you?
Well, I mean, an all ACC matchup of Miami and Louisville, I think, is
Sure.
really interesting. Also, that those teams did not face each other. Can UCLA get back to the promised land for the first time since they won a national championship against a team that nobody would have ever thought would win a regional in Austin and UTSA? I love the, I'm hoping one of these Cinderellas makes it through on
Sure.
our side of the bracket, and not for selfish reasons. I just think it's really cool when that happens in college baseball. Fresno State,
Yep.
Stony Brook, UTSA and Murray State would be stories just like that. That's akin to George Mason and VCU and Butler. That's awesome when that kind of thing happens. Even Duke. Duke hasn't been to Omaha since 1961. So
Wow.
they're hosting it there. They're hosting it their on-campus facility, which is tiny, and you would never think it's a place that would host a super regional, but just the luck of the postseason worked out that way. I'll bet you that's going to be a really cool super regional too. Either Duke or Murray State, either one of them is really a Cinderella, even though Duke has been pretty good for about 5, 6 years now. But to have a chance to get to Omaha for the first time since Kennedy was in office, I mean, all of that stuff is really cool. Oregon State, Florida State is really fun. I love how Link Jarrett's brought that program back to prominence where they belong. And I think the Oregon State story with them being the Notre Dame of college baseball this year is incredible. And the way they made it through their regional, I think, was incredible too. Auburn being the only other team, there is a guarantee there'll be one SEC team
Sure.
in Omaha, but there's no guarantee there'll be two. Watch
Uh-huh.
out for West Virginia. They've been scary all year. And Coastal Carolina is sooner or later one of these Sun Belt teams is going to break through because the Sun Belt is kind of right there near the Power Four in college baseball, and Coastal Carolina could be that team to break through.
I was watching the Hattiesburg Regional on Monday night, and Southern Miss was right on the brink there for a minute. Of course, proud Sun Belt program. So yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Obviously, you being the voice of the Razorbacks, I can't have you make a prediction. It's unprofessional, even though I think I know where you lean. Any last thoughts on that regional, and then we'll get you out of here? Just what's going to happen at Baum-Walker Stadium this
I,
weekend?
I just think that if you're looking for a separator between these two teams, it's an amount of fundamental play in the field for Arkansas. They've been a steady glove team. That's not an equalizer. That's a separator in the game of
Mm,
baseball.
yeah.
There's an amount of trust that goes with it. They're good in the field. Pitchers trust them. They'll throw strikes. Our pitchers trust their stuff. They throw strikes. They're dominant strikes. That's where a lot of those strikeouts come from. A big separator in the series in Baum were 4 errors made by Tennessee and about 3 or 4 other mistakes in the field that'll cost a base. One base makes a massive difference sometimes in a game that's decided by 1 or 2 runs. That to me can be the difference in this super regional too. Both teams hit for power. Both teams have lightning arms. Both teams have deep lineups that can hurt you 1 through 9. And the other thing to remember, so Tennessee does not have their starting catcher, Cannon Peebles, for the first game. He was ejected
That's right.
in the last game of the Knoxville regional for arguing balls and strikes. And so that goes with a 1 game suspension. So they're starting a redshirt freshman who I'm sure is really talented, but hasn't been catching them except for 1 game in midweeks, which means he hasn't been catching the pitchers that they'll be using on Saturday when the series opens. And that's a big aspect when it comes to trust. So those two things I think can end up being very big factors in just a 3 game series in which maybe you can shorten it to 2.
Phil Elson, you can hear him Monday through Friday, ESPN Arkansas, with my other buddy, Matt Jones. I'll be on Friday because the Hogs don't play till Saturday. By the way, major gripes with the schedule. I forgot, I forgot this, but my buddy from Fox Sports Radio is actually the play-by-play voice of UCLA, and he pseudo promised me a Friday, Saturday, Sunday regional, and UCLA got a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I do radio on Saturday. Um, what are we doing with this schedule here? Get UCLA on a Friday night, people. But anyway, so it's been a long time since I've been to a college baseball game, but still, well, I'll get to Omaha one of these years.
You're gonna get to Jackie Robinson Stadium at some point, man. That looks like it'd be kind of a cool place for a college baseball game.
I've walked through it. I've never walked through it on the day of a baseball game, but yeah, no, I had the whole Friday schedule planned and all that, but next time. So, all right, Phil Elson, thank you for the time. Who knows? Maybe we'll do one more of these, a week or so from now. We'll see, TBA. But thank you, and I'll be talking to you on Friday when I'm on halftime. Thank you.
I will write it into my calendar with this pencil that I use to score games, not pen. I'll put it in pencil, okay?
All right. Thank
See
you, Phil.